In this video, I'll be testing the differences between the new Michelin Primacy 4 Plus, the new Michelin Pilot Sport 5, and the established king of the UUHP segment, the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S. Before I start driving, I'd like to spend a quick moment explaining the different design targets of the three different tyres. The Michelin Primacy 4 Plus is an update to the Primacy 4, which is one of the most popular premium touring tyres in the market. Premium touring tyres are intended for driving applications that prioritise safety in the dry and wet, low rolling resistance, low noise and good levels of comfort, rather than sporty handling, which these two have more in mind. The Primacy 4 was already a multiple test winning tyre in the segment, and the Primacy 4 adds in the areas that are core to the Michelin DNA, with an improvement of 8% in wet braking at worn state, while keeping the excellent wear of the Primacy 4. The Primacy 4 Plus is offered in 15 to 20 inch wheel fitments, but is most often fitted in the smaller wheel sizes and is more often fitted to family type cars. The new Pilot Sport 5 replaces the Pilot Sport 4, not the 4S. The non-S version of the Pilot Sport range has always been the ultra high performance sports tyre you fit if you want one of the best all-round road tyres in the segment. Compared to the Pilot Sport 4, the 5 adds a huge amount of tread life without sacrificing any other area. The Pilot Sport 5 is offered in 17 to 21 inch fitments and is fitted to all manner of vehicles. Finally, we have the tyre I'm sure you're all familiar with, the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S. No UUHP tyre has won as many tyre tests as this, and none are as popular online. The 4S is designed to be even more sportier than the Pilot Sport 5, so it should feel a little bit quicker to steer, a little bit more dynamic on track, and it should be more at home on track with better heat management and better track endurance when pushing to and past the limit. In Europe, the 4S is now available in a couple of 18 inch sizes, but it's primarily sold in 19 to 23 inch wheel fitments and is intended for high performance vehicles. Now we understand the differences between these three tyres. Just how big are they in the real world? Well, to find out, I've got the trusty Golf GTI. Each of the tyres is exactly the same 225/40/18, fitted to identical wheels, so there's no influence there. And I'm going to test the wet, dry, noise and comfort of the tyres and look at the rolling resistance. Should be a really fascinating test. This is one I'm very excited to do, so let's get on with it. Wet handling, and before we get into the data and the subjectiveness of the tyre, which I know you're very excited about because I found it fascinating, there's a couple of points I need to clear up. Firstly, I need to remind you that this is a test between different categories of tyre. A premium touring tyre, an ultra high performance tyre, and an ultra high performance tyre, a UUHP tyre. These tyres have different design targets, and as a result, they have different performances in the various categories we're going to test. Please remember, there is no bad tyre here. Each of the three tyres, they are at the very peak of their category. So they're all good tyres, but they do have different performances because of their different design targets. Secondly, you can pretty much ignore all the wet objective data I'm about to give you because I'm in the centre of France. It is peak 2022 European heatwave, and it's currently 40 degrees outside, which is about 105 Fahrenheit. This for wet data is completely unrealistic because the average wet summer road temperature is 15 degrees and we're currently at 40. This does affect the performance of the tyres compound. In particular, the Primacy 4 is going to struggle a little bit more because of these hot temperatures, but I will talk about temperatures a little bit later in the video because I'm sure you're bored now and you want to know the data. Starting with the Primacy 4, the premium touring tyre, I am very pleasantly surprised by this tyre. It was so easy and lovely to drive. I did 3, so we averaged 3 lap times. I did 3 lap times exactly the same time, which I've never done 3 before. I've done 2 and then 1 very close, but 3 exactly the same. I actually had to do a 4th lap just to check the V-Box was working because I didn't trust it for a second. It had a little bit of understeer, as you would imagine. That's kind of what you expect from a touring tyre. And it was a little bit, it just took a second to obtain the slip angle, but the way it built the slip angle, which is from how you turn to how quickly the tyre responds to that action, how it responded to that was beautiful because it was really linear and predictable. And in the wet, like I said, it was just a joy to drive. The average lap time was 102 seconds. Moving on to the Pilot Sport 5, you had more grip. This tyre is very, very impressive in the wet. You felt like you had buckets of grip, especially when turning. The steering response of the car, so the on-center bit of steering, that first little bit of steering movement, didn't feel hugely different from the Primacy 4, but as the car started turning, it turned more quickly and felt like it darted into the corner more, which obviously is what you want from a sports tyre. It was very, very stable at the back, impressively stable. If anything, I'd say there was a bit more understeer in the package than I'd want, but that's very safe for the road. I'd say overall, +2 sportiness, if we're gonna do it that way, and about 4% quicker lap time. Moving on to the Pilot Sport 4S, a tyre we already know is one of the best in the wet in its category. It added some sportiness again over the PS5, but not +2 this time, maybe just +1. Although you could, especially on the higher speed corners when you're developing more grip, you can feel the extra stiffness in the carcass. The tyre just feels more dedicated to the turn. That extra sharpness at the front axle did bring the rear into play a little bit more. So there was a bit more oversteer in the package. Where the Primacy 4 was very neutral and the Pilot Sport 5 was a little bit understeery, the Pilot Sport 4S, as demonstrated here, is wonderfully playful if you want it to be, which I really enjoy in a tyre. However, the ultimate lap time, when you're oversteering, you're not really carrying enough speed through the corner, especially in a front-wheel drive vehicle. So the overall lap time was ever so slightly slower. However, it was more playful and it definitely felt more sporty. 3 very impressive tyres in the wet. I'm not sure the designers of the Primacy 4 Plus ever thought it would be doing dry handling laps on 60-degree surface temperature on a Golf GTI, but here we are and it's doing it surprisingly well. Sure, the steering isn't quite as quick as I'd ideally want. It takes a little bit of time to obtain the slip angle, but like in the wet, it's lovely and linear, and it even lets you attack the corners a little bit. You can even get a little bit darty and a little bit of rear movement. But overall, for a premium touring tyre, I realise this is an 18-inch size, so it's a bit of a performance size. I am very impressed. The biggest negativity of the tyre, unsurprisingly, is the heat. As I've said, it's very, very hot, and the compound really did struggle. It dropped about 1.5 seconds between the first and second lap, but that's not unusual. It's not super unusual to drop time here. That's just a lot of time, and you would never push the tyre that hard on the road, so it would never be a problem. So overall, dry handling, I thought this was where the Primacy 4 was going to really struggle, and I really enjoyed it. Pleasantly surprised overall. Moving on to the Pilot Sport 5, like in the wet, the tyre is more sporty. Turns a little bit quicker, you can feel it dig into the corner a little bit more, but I'm only going to give it a +1 for sporty at the limit on track. So here's something I need to do a better job of talking about. There's 2 types of like ultimate flat out driving. One I call sub-limit fast driving, which represents like a fast road drive, and then there's at-limit track driving. And I would give this Pilot Sport 5 a +2 for the below-limit stuff. So if you're on a fast country road or you're really enjoying the tyre, it is significantly more sporty than the Primacy 4. But as you get up to this very hot, very high grip, you just stress the construction of the tyre a little bit more, and it takes the edge off it. It gives you a little bit more understeer. But Michelin have said, although they know this tyre will get used on track, that wasn't their intention. They could have made it better on track, but that would have reduced some of the on-road performance. And as they have the 4S, they didn't want to do that. And you know what? I also agree with that. The PS4S, in terms of plus sportiness, I'm going to give it a +3. This is where you can really feel the motorsport influence on the tyre. The PS4S is built in a different way to the other 2 tyres, and you can tell. Again, the on-center, the first very part of the movement is only slightly quicker, but boy, does it then sit down on that bigger shoulder, that bigger construction, the bigger blocks on the outer shoulder. It's got a different compound on the outer shoulder, and you can really tell. And that allows you to ask much more of the tyre. It allows you to brake and turn in a way you couldn't with the other 2 tyres. And it just feels fantastic. In this test of these 3 tyres, it feels significantly improved on track. The PS4S also handled the best of the 3 tyres, only dropped about 0.5 seconds over the 3 laps, which is totally respectable in these kind of temperatures on this kind of track. And although the PS4S probably can't quite match the stellar mileage of the other 2 on the road, this lends itself to the PS4S having better track endurance, better heat management, because that's what it's designed to do. A very enjoyable test across these 3 tyres in handling. Let's go see how things switch up in comfort. While the Primacy 4 Plus couldn't quite match the sportiness of the other two tyres in the handling test, the comfort testing has definitely brought the advantage back to the Primacy 4 Plus, the premium touring tyre, because it glides smoothly over the surfaces, and just as a driving experience, it's more serene, especially over the bigger imperfections like I'm on now. That's not to say the Pilot Sport 5 or 4S are uncomfortable tyres. In their segments, they're often the best riding tyres of the group. It just goes to show the advantages a premium touring tyre brings over the competition. Internal noise is incredibly complicated. I've actually run over loads of different surfaces, and on the smooth asphalt, the noise in the cabin between the three sets of tyres is almost indistinguishable. But as you get to the rougher surface, you definitely hear more tread pattern noise and probably more cavity noise, especially on the 4S, with the Pilot Sport 5 sitting logically and actually somewhere between the two. You know what, when I started this test, I really didn't think there'd be a real world application for the Primacy 4 Plus on a car like the Golf GTI in 18 inches, because that's just not what the tyre's intended for. But now I've done all this testing, I really think there is. Sure, the average GTI buyer is going to be more focused on handling and they'll be happier with the Pilot Sport 5 or especially the 4S. But someone like my dad, who happens to drive a Skoda Octavia VRS, which is a Golf GTI in a dress, I think would really appreciate the refinement and the comfort of the Primacy 4 and wouldn't miss the steering response, because on road at road speeds, the steering response is great, it's nice and linear. And while it wouldn't be my first choice for a car like the Golf GTI, I can now certainly understand why people might want to look at this car option. This is the beauty of tyres. There is a tyre for every person. I'll put the rolling resistance data on screen. In this size, the Pilot Sport 5 is hugely impressive, getting close to the rolling resistance of the Primacy 4 Plus, but across the range it's clear the Primacy 4 Plus is the leader, with the Pilot Sport 5 sitting between the two tyres. The braking performance of the tyres in the dry was exactly as you would expect, with the Pilot Sport 4S braking the best. In the wet, the 4S also had an advantage, but I think the extreme temperatures today, you can see my sweat, has spread out the group a little bit, and Michelin say at more representative real world temperatures, the Pilot Sport 5 and 4S would be very similar overall. Now we know all the dynamic differences between the three sets of tyres, I'd like to data flex a little bit on Michelin's behalf. As part of the development of the Primacy 4 Plus and the Pilot Sport 5, Michelin had a number of independent test bodies across Europe test the products against key competitors to see where they benchmark. Firstly, the Primacy 4 Plus was tested against the Bridgestone Turanza TW05, Continental Premium Contact 6 and Goodyear Efficient Grip Performance 2, which are three of the best competitors in the segment. The German organisation DEKRA wear tested the four sets of tyres with a real-world convoy test, which is the gold standard of wear test, way better than using a machine, it's just more applicable to the real world. The new Primacy 4 had a 16,000 kilometre predicted better tread life than the Bridgestone, 5,500 better than the Continental, and just 2,000 shy of the very impressive Goodyear. To find out the grip levels of the four sets of tyres, TÜV tested the braking performance at new and worn state. When new, the group was very close, with the low-wearing Goodyear being the worst in test, but it was only 0.8 metres behind the Michelin, which was very close. However, when worn, the hard work Michelin put into the Primacy 4 Plus really showed. The Michelin was nearly 4 metres better than the next best tyre, which is incredible. The tyre was also the best in aquaplaning. Think this is a fluke? DEKRA also real-world tested the new Pilot Sport 5 against the Bridgestone Potenza Sport, the Continental Premium Contact 6, the Goodyear Eagle F1 Asymmetric 5 and the Pirelli P0 PZ4. The PS5 had 20% better tread life than the next best tyre, which was the Goodyear, and 40% better than the average of the group. Braking for the PS5 was equally as impressive as the Primacy 4 Plus. The Michelin was the best in the wet when new, the best in the dry when new, and while the Bridgestone and Pirelli did have a small advantage, 4% at worn state in wet braking, the 45% tread life disadvantage they had indicates they're using quite a soft compound and is a bit rough on your wallet. The wet braking test was also conducted like today at non-representative high temperatures. Michelin had TÜV retest the wet braking only at new at more representative lower real-world temperatures, and the PS5 shone. I think it's time I did some more work on temperature testing. There we have it, 3 very impressive but very different tyres. I hope this video has cleared some things up for you, but if you have any further questions, please do ask below. As worn state testing is so important, much like real world temperature testing, this is something I'm working very hard on. So subscribe for more content along that lines in the future. I think it's going to be super interesting. Let me know what your next tyre is going to be. And as always, safe motoring.